But we begin tonight with a public appeal for missing British backpacker Grace Millane.
Mr. True Crime.
We actually don't know if she's been murdered or not yet. She may be alive and well. Okay. But she might also be dead. Okay? And it could be that you've done it.
This is Jesse Kempson, adamantly denying any involvement in the disappearance of Grace Millane. Unbeknownst to him, the police have secured CCTV footage from the night she vanished. So, are we about to uncover the truth? Or is this the setup for the most shocking plot twist in true crime history?
Grace was our sunshine, and she will be missed forever.
You have ripped a hole in my heart, one that will never be repaired.
Grace Millane was a beacon of warmth, a young woman who seemed to bring light and laughter wherever she went. Born on December 2nd, 1996, in the quiet town of Wickford, Essex, England, Grace was the youngest of 3 siblings. She was cherished by her parents and siblings. Her family often described her as compassionate and adventurous, embodying a spirit of kindness that drew people to her. Grace was known for her enthusiasm for life and her dreams of exploring the world. She was known not just for her adventurous spirit, but also for her love of hockey and painting. After recently graduating with a degree in advertising and marketing from University of Lincoln, she took the leap to fulfill her long-held desire for adventure. Her family supported her every step of the way, proud of her independence and courage. After graduation, Grace finally set off on her long-awaited journey. Starting in South America, she immersed herself in the landscapes and cultures of Peru, Bolivia, and Chile, sharing her experiences and staying connected with loved ones back home. By the time she reached New Zealand, she had already created countless memories, excited for yet another destination where she could connect with new people and explore the country's beauty. Grace Millane arrived in New Zealand on November 20th, 2018, after a 6-week trek through South America. Her travels had taken her to iconic places, like Cape Reinga, and she kept in touch with her family, sending updates and sharing photos along the way. On November 30th, Grace made her way back to Auckland, checking into Base Backpackers, a hostel located in the heart of the city. December 1st, 2018, Grace's last day, started like any other in Auckland. She had recently matched with someone on Tinder, exchanged a few messages, and soon enough, they agreed to meet up. At exactly 5:37 p.m., Grace left her hostel, stepping out into the evening for what she thought would be a casual night out. December 2nd was Grace's 22nd birthday. Messages from family and friends poured in, each filled with warm wishes, but none received a reply. The silence was out of character, especially for Grace, who always updated her family on her travels. A quiet unease settled in as the hours passed with no word from her. Something felt wrong. Grace was never one to go silent, and her family's concern grew deeper with each unanswered message. By December 5th, Grace's family, now gripped with worry, filed a missing persons report with the New Zealand police. They informed the authorities that Grace had been carrying 2 cell phones for emergencies, yet both were now going straight to voicemail. This chilling discovery only intensified their fears, as Grace would never simply disappear without a word. The police immediately contacted her hostel and discovered that Grace hadn't returned since December 1st. At first glance, there was no sign of foul play. Her belongings were still in her room, but it didn't take detectives long to start tracing her movements from that evening. Grace was known for her openness and love of sharing her travels on social media. When police examined her online presence, they noticed an unusual last comment on her Facebook profile picture. It came from Jesse, who had described her as beautiful and radiant. This simple remark would soon become a crucial lead in the investigation.
What were the next steps in the investigation?
One of the staff had looked at Grace's Facebook account. The last person to comment was a Jesse Shane. And it was a photo of Grace, and he'd gone beautiful, very radiant. So he becomes a person with...
So, it turned out that the same person Grace met on that Tinder date was a man named Jesse Kempson. He was living at the City Life Hotel, and quickly, he became a person of intense interest for the police. Detectives wasted no time, diving into hours of CCTV footage from around the city to trace his movements. But who was Jesse Kempson really? Jesse Shane Kempson, born December 28, 1991, in Lower Hutt, New Zealand, was far from the average man he appeared to be. Known for his compulsive lying and narcissistic tendencies, his life was a disturbing web of deceit. Raised in Wellington, Kempson once played representative softball and eventually moved to Australia with his mother as a teenager. By 2011, he returned to New Zealand, where he lived in a boarding house in Wellington. It was during this period that Kempson's elaborate fabrications truly began. He boasted that he'd just signed as a professional player for New Zealand's national softball team, the Black Sox, claiming a lucrative contract was just on the horizon. Not stopping there, he crafted a fantasy life of privilege, alleging he held a bachelor's degree in international law and came from a wealthy family with influential connections in immigration New Zealand. Kempson's lies permeated every part of his life, even his living arrangements. He shared flats with young professionals who quickly grew wary of his odd behavior. One former roommate accused him of stealing money, and his city life landlord reported losing thousands when Kempson failed to pay rent. In reality, a simple inquiry revealed that the Black Sox had never even heard of him. After spending 6 years in Australia, Kempson returned to New Zealand in 2016, leaving behind a trail of deceit and broken trust. But little did anyone know that this compulsive liar and manipulator would soon be a huge lead in the most horrifying case in the nation. Captured by CCTV on December 1st, Grace met Jesse Kempson at Sky City, an entertainment complex and casino nestled in Auckland's central business district. Just moments later, at 5:45 p.m., the two were seen together, walking side by side. They appeared to be heading toward a nearby bar. From there, the pair moved on to the Mexican cafe, spending about an hour before leaving. By 8:30 p.m., they arrived at the Bluestone Room, a bar where CCTV captured them growing increasingly close. In the midst of this, Grace sent a message to a friend, sharing that she really liked Jesse and felt they had a connection. It seemed to her like a promising night, unaware of the darkness that lay ahead. The two were seen enjoying each other's company, appearing relaxed and comfortable. Shortly after 9:30 p.m., CCTV footage captured them walking down the street together, eventually entering the City Life Hotel, an image that would later haunt investigators and those who loved her. On December 2nd, at 8:00 a.m., CCTV captured Jesse entering the elevator alone, leaving the hotel without Grace. He made his way to a nearby shopping mall, where he purchased a large suitcase and cleaning supplies, each item a chilling hint of the events that had unfolded. After making these purchases, he returned to his hotel room, setting in motion a grim series of actions that would soon come to light. Kempson was next seen bringing the recently purchased items back into his apartment, a disturbing routine now unfolding on CCTV. Not long after, he was captured leaving the building again. Kempson then hailed a taxi, heading to a nearby car rental agency where he secured a vehicle. Returning to his apartment, he changed his clothes and later went out to a nearby bar to meet another Tinder date. However, this date was short-lived. His unsettling demeanor quickly put her off, and she left, sensing something was not quite right. Returning to his apartment, Kempson borrowed a steam cleaning machine, which he brought inside. He remained out of sight for the next couple of hours, using the machine within his apartment before reappearing again. At precisely 9:30 a.m., Kempson was captured on CCTV pulling a hotel luggage cart toward his room. Shortly after, he reappeared with the cart, now loaded with the new suitcase he had bought along with several smaller bags. Methodically, he transferred the luggage into the rented red car before returning the cart to the hotel. With everything in place, he drove off, each calculated movement raising even more alarming questions for investigators. Early that morning on December 3rd, Kempson arrived at the store to purchase a brand new shovel. The timing and nature of the purchase added yet another ominous detail to the unfolding investigation. Kempson then returned to his apartment building, later emerging with a trash bag in hand, which he disposed of casually. His next stop was a dry cleaning service, where he dropped off clothes for cleaning. Finally, he was seen meticulously washing his rented car, each action meticulously carried out. each one adding another unsettling layer to the disturbing sequence of events. On December 5th, Kempson was seen discarding more items into random trash cans around the city. By then, the police had been alerted, with Grace's father filing a missing persons report as worry intensified. Piece by piece, detectives began assembling the puzzle of Grace's disappearance, leading them to City Life Hotel on December 6th, where they inquired about Jesse at the reception. In a stroke of timing, Kempson arrived just as the officers were investigating. Sensing trouble, he attempted to walk away, but the police quickly intercepted him, bringing him in for questioning. During questioning on December 6th, Kempson initially told police that he and Grace had parted ways amicably after their date. He claimed everything had gone smoothly that evening, saying they separated around 10 p.m. and had even discussed meeting up the next day. However, he added that when he later tried to contact her, he found that she had unmatched him on Tinder. His story, though, began to fall apart under scrutiny, as detectives sensed inconsistencies that hinted at a much darker reality.
Tell us about Grace.
So I was talking to Grace on Tinder.
Yeah.
We'd matched on Friday. I saw that we'd matched the next day on Saturday. And then we met at Sky City, and then we decided that we were going up to Andy's Burger Bar, which is on the first floor.
Whose idea was it to go to that particular burger place?
Me, because I didn't initially know that she was real.
What do you mean?
Well, there's a lot of... So have you heard of catfish?
No.
So catfishing is where someone uses your profile or uses your photos and pretends to be you and then meets and you're a completely different person.
Right.
And it's on Tinder, it's all about the way you look. And so if they use more endearing photos, you're more likely to swipe for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
How does meeting in a public place sort of protect you from meeting someone who's not as good looking as...
Well, there's security there. So if she wasn't who she said she was,
Yeah.
at least in my mind I'd feel safe.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's us.
Down there?
Yeah.
Is that before or after?
That is after.
Okay. And where are you guys going now?
So she's going that way and I'm going across the street.
Where do you walk?
I go down Queen Street. No, I go down Victoria Street, straight down to the bottom, and then hang a left, and I head towards the viaduct.
You go to the viaduct a bit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
You've kind of walked in a bit of a funny direction if you were planning to go to the viaduct.
Well, it's the direction I normally go.
Yeah. It's I mean, I'm just sort of saying, like, if you were planning to go to the viaduct.
I normally go down Queen Street and then cross at the bottom of Queen Street, go through the containers,
Yeah.
and then walk along the wharf.
Yeah. Is there a particular reason you would kind of do that?
I feel safer down that way. I don't know, it's a lot safer for me to be walking down that way than walking down the back streets.
As officers meticulously sifted through extensive data, a disturbing narrative started to emerge. On December 7th, Auckland police held a press conference, urgently appealing to the public for any information that could help locate Grace. Despite their efforts, however, few leads came forward.
Investigation, we have reviewed hours and hours of CCTV footage, and this will continue throughout the weekend. We now have the last known sighting of Grace at 9:41 p.m. on Saturday, 1st of December, at the City Life Hotel with a male companion. Police have identified this man, and he has been spoken to. Through our investigations, we have also identified a location of interest an apartment in the City Life Hotel in Queen Street. We are conducting a scene examination at this address. I understand there will be lots of questions about what we are doing and why we're doing it and exactly why we're there. However, this is an ongoing investigation and I'm not at liberty to discuss the details that some I don't have at the moment. At present, we've spoken to a person and we still have no evidence of foul play. Grace is still missing.
Determined to find his daughter, Grace's father, David Millane, traveled to New Zealand, where he made an emotional public plea, hoping to reach anyone who might have seen her. Meanwhile, Auckland police intensified their efforts, retracing Grace's final movements. It wasn't long before unsettling revelations began to surface, piecing together a picture no one wanted to believe.
Thank you for coming today. As you know, Grace has been missing for several days. We last had contact with her on Saturday the 1st of December, and as a family we've been extremely concerned for her welfare. Grace is a lovely, outgoing, fun-loving, family-orientated daughter. Grace has never been out of contact for this amount of time. She's usually in daily contact with either her mother, myself, her two brothers, members of the family on social media. I don't know if you know, but Grace is on a year-long worldwide overseas experience. Grace started this travel journey in Peru in South America, and at the end of this was really looking forward to the second leg in New Zealand. She arrived here on the 20th of November and has been bombarding us with numerous photographs and messages of her adventures. We are all extremely upset, and it's very difficult at this time to fully describe the range of emotions we are going through. While we are very grateful for the media coverage both here and back home, we are finding this situation quite upsetting, and would sincerely hope that the media continue to respect our privacy. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to appeal to anybody who has seen, spoken to or come into contact with Grace over the last few days, and to come forward with any detail, no matter how small, and contact the investigation team.
Convinced of Jesse's involvement, police swiftly obtained a search warrant for his hotel room, initiating a detailed forensic analysis. Despite his attempts to clean the area, investigators found traces of blood in and around the carpet thanks to the use of luminol, a chemical that reveals hidden bloodstains. These chilling discoveries painted a clearer picture of what might have transpired, turning suspicion into something far more concrete.
These DNA profiling results provide extremely strong scientific support for the proposition that the DNA from the bloodstain originated from Miss Millane.
On December 7th, Jesse was brought in for a second interview. Faced with mounting evidence, he finally broke down and admitted everything, unable to maintain his fabricated story any longer. The truth had surfaced, revealing the horrifying reality of what had happened to Grace.
You've indicated that you're willing to speak to us about the events of last Saturday. Is that correct?
Yes.
Tell me what happened last Saturday.
Started talking to me about 50 Shades of Grey, which is a fantasy movie that's out. We started having sex. At first it was just normal. It was very placid, and then she asked me if we could get into bondage, and then all I remember is falling asleep. I need to go.
Would you like some fresh air?
Yeah, please. I was in shock. I didn't know what to do. I went downstairs and I was just, I don't know, I was all over the place. I didn't believe what had happened. I was just terrified and scared. I thought that she had gone. I thought she had left.
Pathologist, specialist doctor, will perform a post-mortem. They're very skilled at establishing people's causes of death. Do you understand that? Did you kill Grace Millane?
Finally, with his confession and the mounting evidence against him, police arrested Jesse Kempson for the murder of Grace Millane. The case had taken a dark turn, but Grace's family and the public were now one step closer to justice.
Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
This jury, having found you guilty of the murder of Grace Emmy Rose Millane, you are...
On December 8th, police announced to the public that Grace is no longer alive, officially shifting the investigation to a homicide. Under the weight of mounting evidence, Jesse admitted that Grace was dead, though he continued to deny responsibility for her murder. Later that evening, he led police to the remote Waitakere Ranges, where they uncovered her body, buried inside the suitcase he had recently purchased. This grim discovery confirmed the worst fears and brought the tragic case to a heartbreaking conclusion.
But of course it's what happened inside the room that counts. He put sustained pressure on her neck, to the point where blood was coming from her nose. In the early hours of that morning, before the trip out to the Waitakere Ranges to bury Ms. Millane, Mr. has searched pornographic websites, he's taken photos of Ms. Millane's, he's flipped back to watching more pornography, he's confirmed a date with another woman, he's gone shopping for a suitcase and the necessary cleaning products, and he's attempted to clean up the mess in his apartment and gone back to the supermarket for a rug doctor so he could complete the task. And of course he's put Ms. Millane's body in a suitcase.
Sadly, the evidence we have gathered to this point of the inquiry has established that this is a homicide.
At this stage, police had built a compelling case against Jesse Kempson. However, the media's portrayal took a sensationalist angle, labeling it the 50 Shades murder trial. The defense anchored its argument on the claim that Grace Millane, then 21, had an interest in rough sex, and that her tragic death was an accident resulting from consensual choking gone wrong.
The defence says to you, members of the jury, this is not a murder, but an accident that occurred during consensual sexual activity as part of casual sex between two people who were intoxicated. It developed into activities that can carry some risk if not done properly. But I say to you this, the issue is that the post-death conduct is unlikely to tell you much about the earlier circumstances of her death, and much less still about what Mr. was thinking and trying to do when the death occurred. Mr. accepts that his actions did cause Ms. Millane's death. However, the defence raises an issue about the role that alcohol and intoxication may have played in that death.
Consequently, the trial became overshadowed by discussions of Grace's personal life and alleged preferences, even as Kempson's identity remained protected under anonymity laws. This approach, often referred to as the 50 Shades defense, is a tactic sometimes used by defense teams to reduce charges from murder to manslaughter.
The defense says that these actions were part of sexual activities that they were doing together and were in no way intended to cause any harm to her. This is not a murder. The post-death conduct is unlikely to help you much, members of the jury, in determining the critical issue of what Mr. was thinking when he put his hands around Ms. Millane's throat that night. That is because those actions, now accepted and regretted, are consistent with panic as anything else.
The 50 Shades defense permits defendants to claim the victim's death was an unintended consequence of consensual acts. Disturbingly, this strategy has led to reduced charges in previous cases, such as those involving Carol Califano, Natalie Connolly, and Laura Hudson. Recognizing the implications of this defense, on July 6, 2020, the UK Parliament amended the Domestic Abuse Bill, effectively closing this loophole in British courts. This long overdue legislation now prevents the use of consent for sexual gratification as a defense for causing harm, shielding victims from the invasion of privacy during trials. Although this reform came after Kempson's trial, he faced justice independently of the new law. Despite maintaining his innocence, the evidence painted a starkly different picture. Kempson was ultimately convicted and sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum non-parole period of 17 years. As the case unfolded, disturbing revelations about Kempson's past emerged. 2 additional women came forward, each accusing him of assault after meeting him on Tinder.
One woman, who cannot be named, told the jury she first matched with the accused on the dating app Tinder in March last year. They met up for a drink, but nothing more happened until they started messaging again and agreed to meet up in Auckland CBD one late afternoon in early November. They ended up buying some alcohol and going back to his apartment, where they talked for several hours.
Earlier he'd been talking about how much he loved me and wanted to be with me and stuff. He walked over and he kissed me and then tried to lead me over to the bed, but I stayed sitting down.
The woman said she told the man she didn't want to have intercourse, but instead gave him oral sex. It was during this that the woman said the man sat down, putting his full weight on her face.
I couldn't breathe. He sat down so that he wasn't supporting any of his body weight, but he had grabbed my forearms as well, so I couldn't move my arms or breathe.
The woman told Crown Prosecutor Brian Dickey she was scared.
I was kicking violently. I was trying to move my arms, and he would have felt me fighting against his arms.
But the woman said he didn't move.
I was kicking around for about, I don't know, it felt like forever, but it was probably only 30, 40 seconds. But I managed to tilt my head to the left so I could get the tiniest little bit of air.
Increasingly terrified, the woman tried something else.
I decided maybe I would just try to lie completely still and limp, because then maybe he'd realise something was wrong. So I just lay there completely still, my arms just flopping.
She said he still didn't move.
There were so many thoughts running through my mind, but it was more that this can't be the way that I die.
The woman said she started thinking about her family and her friends. She said she was scared and she didn't know what to do. She just wanted him to notice that she couldn't breathe. When he finally got off her, she said he asked her what was wrong. She told him she couldn't breathe, and she said he turned to her and asked, "You don't think I did that on purpose, did you?" Through tears, she told the court she didn't know what to say.
I was still trying to catch my breath. I think I was just in disbelief. And
by October 2020, he faced 8 new charges related to these offenses, resulting in an additional sentence of 11 years to be served concurrently with his life sentence. Jesse Kempson now serves his time in Auckland prison, held accountable for the crimes that devastated countless lives.
You're so full of mate. You have no reason to convict me. You're full of
Throughout the trial, Kempson's defense team argued that Grace's death was a tragic accident, a misstep during consensual activity, claiming Kempson had panicked and attempted to cover it up out of fear, not as part of a calculated crime. They suggested his actions afterward, using Grace's credit card, buying cleaning supplies, and hiding her body, were desperate reactions from a man in shock.
Come to what he did afterwards. He lied, and he tried to cover it up. There's no dispute about that. He himself owned that on the 8th of December. Precisely the sort of high-stress, unexpected situation that human beings, fallible as we are, can get it wrong. He did that because he feared he wouldn't be believed. He made that decision, selfish as it may have been, was not the right thing to do. You're not going to get any argument from the defence about that. Because if you accept that it's a possibility, that he acted out of panic, that he made the wrong call, he didn't think he'd be believed, the point of discovery of Ms. Millane's death is that pivot point, where whatever intention or state of mind there was could change as a result of a fear of not being believed.
Yet the prosecution's case depicted something far darker: calculation and deception. They argued that Kempson's actions were cold and methodical, not impulsive or remorseful. CCTV footage, forensic evidence, and his own behavior exposed troubling inconsistencies, casting serious doubt on his claims of accidental death.
To have killed Grace Millane, the defendant, gentleman over here at the back behind me, had to have had her under his grip, suffocating her, if that's the right term, strangling her is probably the correct term, for a total of 5 to 10 minutes, at some point of which she lost consciousness and would have become under his handhold, unconscious and limp and lifeless, and he had to carry on. And if that's not reckless murder in this country, ladies and gentlemen, somebody will have to explain to me what is. This is not sex play. This is not restricted breath games. This is holding a person's neck and throat and wrapping your hand or hands around it, however you did it, for an extended period of time, feeling their struggle as she must have struggled for her life, and then going limp and into unconsciousness, and you carry on.
Further testimony from other women who encountered Kempson revealed a troubling pattern of manipulation, control, and dishonesty, further damaging his credibility. Jesse Kempson's phone data revealed chilling details, including searches on body disposal and cleaning methods shortly after Grace's death.
He took that photograph there when she was dead. He has eroticised the death of British backpacker Grace Millane, which occurred under his handhold and on her birthday. He has a morbid interest, a morbid sexual interest, and he has memorialised it for himself by taking the photographs, and that is the ultimate triumph of the defendant over Grace Millane. His trophy photographs.
He also used her phone and credit cards to make it seem she was still alive, and investigators found he had taken photos of her. This evidence highlighted a disturbing level of premeditation and deception. Forensic pathologist Dr. Simon Stables presented the court with detailed findings from Grace Millane's post-mortem examination.
When I arrived there, the suitcase was still on the ground, so I observed the suitcase. Then I briefly left the scene while they did some further excavation. Then I came back and watched them actually remove the suitcase from the ground.
Just so that we're entirely clear, it was later confirmed that you were dealing with, in this post-mortem, Ms. Grace Millane.
Yes. And in this case, there was an area of significant bruising, and it was on the left side of the neck, and it basically extended from the jaw down. If you look at your own neck, there's a very broad band of muscle which comes down the side of your neck called sternomastoid muscle. So the bruising was to the midline of that, or just over more towards the right. There has been sufficient pressure in that place for a sufficient period of time and for sufficient force for that bruising to occur. The bruising wouldn't occur, I don't think, with a sort of a gentle pressure on the neck. It has to be something a bit more forceful than that.
When you see a bruise, you can't tell whether something is the result of consensual activity or not.
A consensual bruise?
Well, the bruise doesn't tell you whether it's consensual, the result of consensual activity.
No, all I can say is a bruise is there, and then give my opinion as to what I think the cause may have been.
And so again, if we have a grab in the context of consensual but physical sex, this bruise here could have been the result in it. You simply can't tell whether that's a consensual bruise or not.
Well, both of those could be.
Are you agreeing with me?
Yes.
He described the injuries he had uncovered, painting a chilling picture of the violence Grace endured in her final moments. His testimony left the court with a stark and sobering insight into the brutality of the crime.
All I can say is that it's been due to pressure on the neck, and that pressure has been applied for long enough for that bruising to occur, and with enough force for that bruising to occur.
Can you speak to how long that might be or what that level of force might be?
No, I can't. All I can say that it's the bruising wouldn't occur, I don't think, with a sort of a gentle pressure on the neck. It has to be something a bit more.
In the end, the weight of evidence against Kempson was overwhelming. His defense could not bridge the gaps in his story with the undeniable reality of his actions following Grace's death. After days of deliberation, on November 22, 2019, the jury delivered their verdict. Jesse Kempson was guilty of Grace Millane's murder. For Grace's family, the verdict brought a measure of justice, though it could never fully heal their loss. In a heartbreaking turn, David Millane, the father of Grace Millane, passed away from cancer just months after the trial that convicted his daughter's killer. His death marked another tragic loss for the family, who had endured unimaginable grief, now compounded by the absence of a father who had fought tirelessly for justice for his daughter. In February 2020, Kempson was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum non-parole period of 17 years. This sentence ensured he would face the consequences of his actions.
The man who murdered Grace Millane will spend at least 17 years behind bars before he's eligible for early release. The 28-year-old strangled the British backpacker in his central Auckland apartment after they met for a Tinder date on the eve of her 22nd birthday.
The verdict of murder today will be welcomed by every member of the Millane family and friends of Grace. It will not reduce the pain, the suffering that we've had to endure for over the past year. Can't see it. Grace was taken away from us in the most brutal fashion a year ago, and our lives and family have been ripped apart. This will be with us for the rest of our lives. Grace was a beautiful, talented, loving daughter. Grace was our sunshine, and she will be missed forever. She did not deserve to be murdered in such a barbaric way on her OE year. We would like to thank several people. Auckland Police Force, been professional, diligent and thorough all through this investigation. A special thank you to Detective Inspector Scott Beard, Detective Senior Sergeant Greg Brand and Detective Tony Jordan. We would like to thank the Crown Prosecution team, Brian, Robin and Lita. They never flinched away from the more intimate details of the case and were compassionate and thoughtful where the family matters arose. The press contingent, you lot, who have attended court every day with my wife and I and reported truthfully, respectfully, all events as they unfolded. Last but not least, we would love to thank the people of New Zealand. They've opened their hearts to Grace and her family. I cannot express our gratitude enough for all the offers and gifts of kindness that we have received over the last year. Finally, we must return home and try and pick up the pieces of our lives and day to day without our beloved Grace. Thank you all.
Gillian Millane, Grace's mother, spoke to the court via video link, expressing her heartbreak and torment. She described the haunting pain of imagining the terror and suffering her daughter must have endured in her final moments, words that cut deeply into the courtroom silence.
Confident, kind, intelligent, with a desire to travel, to meet new people, see the world. I am absolutely heartbroken that you have taken my daughter's future and robbed me of so many more memories that we were going to create. I received a phone call from my husband David confirming the worst possible news any parent, and one that would change my life forever. My darling Grace, dead, aged only 22. Our family, my family, broken. I was 1 week post-op when our nightmare began. Earlier that year, I had been diagnosed with breast cancer. Grace had been my rock throughout my treatment, and that was our last hurdle as a family. For 8 days, I sat unknowing of the whereabouts of a bright, vibrant, family-orientated Grace. I was in a state of shock and numbness. During these days, I sat helplessly, distressed, and in agonising pain, not knowing where my Grace was. The days passed, and I knew in my heart that Grace was dead. Her tragic life cut short by your willful, cruel actions. You took it upon yourself to murder my beautiful Grace, an innocent young lady. You have ripped a hole in my heart, one that will never be repaired. You walked into our lives and destroyed Grace in the pursuit of your own sexual gratification.
This trial powerfully reminded us of the essential role that digital evidence, forensic expertise, and unyielding determination play in pursuing justice. Through the commitment of law enforcement and the legal system, Grace's story found a measure of closure. Her memory was honored, and her tragic loss was etched into a collective memory that won't allow her to be forgotten. Even the Prime Minister issued a public apology, expressing sorrow and regret that such a tragedy could occur on New Zealand soil. Her words reflected the nation's collective grief, as many felt Grace's loss deeply, as though she were one of their own.
Firstly, I cannot imagine the grief of her family and what they will be experiencing and feeling right now. And my thoughts and prayers are with her father, David, who is in the country, her mother, Gillian, who cannot be here, and her wider family, friends, and loved ones. You know, from the Kiwis I have spoken to, there is this overwhelming sense of hurt and shame that this has happened in our country, a place that prides itself on our hospitality, on our manaakitanga, especially to those who are visiting our shores. And so, on behalf of New Zealand, I want to apologise to Grace's family. Your daughter should have been safe here, and she wasn't, and I'm sorry for that. I've advised the family through the police that if there is anything we can do to assist, we are here to help with that.
Vigils were held across the country in memory of Grace Millane, as communities gathered to mourn her tragic loss. In cities like Auckland, Wellington, and Christchurch, people came, together by candlelight, honoring her life and showing solidarity with her grieving family. The gatherings were a poignant reminder of the impact Grace had on those around her, and the deep sorrow felt by so many.
The first of the vigils being held around the country tonight for murdered British backpacker Grace Millane has begun in Auckland at St Patrick's Cathedral Square. Shortly before it started, her family released a statement that thanked New Zealanders for an outpouring of love, messages and compassion. Her father David says in some small way Grace will forever be a Kiwi. He and Grace's uncle Martin will return to the UK this weekend with her body.
Say on behalf of New Zealanders to the Millane family who are heading home on the weekend.
Oh, it's just so sorry, you know. I can't imagine any parents having to go through this, and especially somebody so young or whatever the age, wanting to travel the world, pass as a degree, you know, want to do an overseas, you know, the old OE. And even though I've only got sons, when they go overseas, even I'm sort of scared, you know, but would have loved to have had a daughter, but you can imagine, you know, the grief this family is going through, and nobody should go through that, you know.
Grace Millane's tragic story sent waves of sorrow and reflection across the globe, resonating deeply with families, travelers, and advocates for women's safety. As news of the trial and its verdict spread, Grace's story became more than just another headline. It served as a powerful reminder of the vulnerabilities people face when seeking connection in today's digital world. In New Zealand, where Grace's murder took place, the public responded with an overwhelming show of solidarity for her family. Candlelight vigils lit up Auckland, Wellington, and Christchurch as thousands gathered to honor Grace's memory and share in her family's grief. Even New Zealand's Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, personally extended an apology to Grace's family, voicing a sorrow shared by many who felt the tragedy as though she were one of their own.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. Now I see, was blind, but now I see.
Of amazing grace, how sweet the sound.
Yet, amid the national outpouring of grief, we cannot overlook the media's role. The case, at times controversially dubbed the 50 Shades murder, nearly saw its narrative derailed. Now let's explore the prosecution of Grace Millane's murder and assess how the media handled their reporting on violence against women. In the trial of Grace Millane, the media's portrayal played a significant yet controversial role. Dubbing it the 50 Shades trial, many outlets shifted the focus from the serious nature of the crime to sensationalized aspects of Grace's private life. This label not only undermined the gravity of her murder, but also inadvertently supported the defense's narrative that portrayed Grace as a willing participant in dangerous sexual activities. Such framing risks trivializing the severity of the case and distracts from the key issue: violence against women, a prevalent and escalating problem in New Zealand. Given the media's unprofessionalism and penchant for sensationalism, it's no surprise that Aotearoa New Zealand faces significant challenges with violence against women, recording some of the highest rates among OECD countries. From 2009 to 2018, intimate partner violence claimed the lives of 125 women, a grim statistic reported by the New Zealand Family Violence Death Review Committee. The trend continues with a troubling rise in reported sexual crimes each year since 2014. Grace Millane's tragic death is a stark reminder of a broader issue that plagues Aotearoa New Zealand, which has one of the highest rates of violence against women, VAW, among OECD countries. In the examination of media representation, recent UK research highlights a disturbing trend. Headlines often blame victim survivors for the abuse they endure. This issue becomes even more pronounced in cases of femicide, where victims' characters are frequently attacked. Citing specific examples points out problematic headlines from the UK media regarding the trial of Grace Millane's murder. For instance, the Evening Standard in 2019 reported, Grace Millane was a member of BDSM dating sites and asked ex-partner to choke her during sex, court hears. And the BBC in the same year noted, Grace Millane murder trial. Backpacker died accidentally during sex. Backpacker died when sex act went wrong. These headlines prompt a critical question about the media's responsibility in reporting violence against women in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Under the glare of intense media scrutiny, Grace's family faced these narratives daily. Despite the immense challenge, they channeled international attention to foster greater awareness of violence against women. In a review of 25 articles, 11 featured language or narratives that subtly engaged in victim blaming within the context of RSGW, relationship, sexual, and gender-based violence. A notably prevalent narrative involved detailed reports of Grace's sexual history, including her past sexual activities, use of dating applications, and involvement in BDSM-related websites. This focus on BDSM was dominant across the articles, yet only twice was it mentioned how Grace had historically engaged in these activities safely. Further examples of victim-blaming language were found in extended quotes from the perpetrator, where he portrayed Grace as initiating rough sexual activities. Grace brought up the topic of bondage and asked him to hold her down and grab her neck. Millane enjoyed her partner putting his hands around her neck. Overall, 22 other sentences throughout the 25 articles carried similar connotations, reinforcing a victim-blaming narrative that overshadowed the case. Still, the media was just one side of the problem. There were global discussions about online dating safety, the risks women face while traveling solo, and the urgent need for stronger protections against gender-based violence. Advocacy groups worldwide rallied around Grace's story to spotlight the importance of safety in digital dating, encouraging people to remain cautious and vigilant when meeting new individuals. Her story highlighted the critical need for public awareness and resources around safe dating practices, fueling campaigns that promote personal safety and preventive strategies. In honor of her legacy, Grace's family established the Love Grace Fund, a charity aimed at supporting domestic abuse survivors and advocating for women's safety. Through this organization, Grace's memory continues to inspire hope, resilience, and positive change. Her family remains committed to advocating for the safety of young travelers, with the hope that her story will help prevent similar tragedies. Grace Millane's story has been memorialized across news outlets, documentaries, and safety campaigns, each reinforcing the profound impact of her life and untimely passing. Grace has become a symbol of resilience and change, urging society to foster a world where young people can explore, connect, and live free from fear. But for the people of Charlottesville, resilience, hope, and courage meant nothing as the disappearance of 2 university girls led to the most horrifying 5 years of their existence. Click on the next video to find out how a DNA sample brought back peace to their town.